Right now, on my kitchen counter, next to my coffee, next to my keys, there is a certified forensic report from Verita Document Sciences. It's 11 pages, spiral-bound. The cover sheet has a chain of custody number stamped in red. I have read it so many times the top right corner is starting to curl. Not because I don't understand what it says, because I keep waiting for the part where it becomes explainable. It doesn't. The standard Ancestry DNA result came back 6 weeks ago. It said I had a parent-child match, 50% shared DNA, with a woman named Diane Collier, the woman I have called Aunt Diane my entire life. Ancestry DNA doesn't editorialize. It just gives you the number and lets you sit with it. So I did what I do at work when a document doesn't make sense. I commissioned a second opinion. I called a colleague at Verita, explained the situation without explaining the situation, and asked for a full identity duplication analysis using the DNA file, Sandra's death certificate, and Diane's publicly available records. The Verita report is where footnote 7 lives. Page 9, subsection C. Identity duplication is consistent with a single biological individual maintaining 2 distinct legal profiles across the observed documentary record. Confidence 97.4%. Chain of custody certified. That's the clinical way of saying the woman who raised me and the woman sitting at my Thanksgiving table every year for 3 decades are the same person. Sandra, my mother, buried in Lot 44 of Greenbrook Cemetery, was a cover story. Diane is my mother. She has always been my mother. I work in forensic document authentication. Tax filings, notarized transfers, deed chains, identity records. My job is finding the thing that doesn't belong. The number that's 1 digit off. The signature that's slightly too consistent. The date that predates the event it's certifying. I have built a career on noticing, so when I tell you I missed this for 32 years, I need you to sit with that for a second, because it doesn't mean I wasn't paying attention. It means Diane was exceptional at what she did. She has this thing. Whenever a question catches her off guard, she straightens whatever object is closest to her. A coaster, a fork, a salt shaker. Like if she can get the physical world into alignment, the conversation will follow. I didn't recognize it as a tell until I was an adult. But when I think back now, I can map every lie she ever told me to an object she touched immediately after. I was 12 when I asked her why she didn't have any photos of herself pregnant. She was helping me with a school project. Family history, the kind of thing teachers assign without knowing what they're detonating. She reached over and straightened my pencil case on the table. Sweetheart, you're catastrophizing again. I was 16 when I found a letter in Sandra's desk, not addressed to anyone, never sent, and asked Diane if she knew what it meant. She straightened the stack of mail on the counter. Sweetheart, you're catastrophizing again. Same phrase. Every time. 2 words designed to make me feel like the problem was the size of my imagination, not the size of what she was hiding. I heard it so many times I started to believe her. That's the thing about a really good gaslight. It doesn't just change what you think about the situation. It changes what you think about yourself. My 32nd birthday. Sandra had been gone almost 2 years. Pancreatic cancer. 6 weeks from diagnosis to the end. Fast and brutal and completely without ceremony. In the last days, in hospice, she kept asking me to bring her the cedar box from the top shelf. We searched the house twice. Never found a cedar box. At the birthday dinner, Diane handed me a small gift. Inside was a locket, gold, old, oval, the kind you can open. Empty inside, no photo. She said, just casually, setting down her wine glass, "Your mother always wanted you to have this." I said, "Where did you find it?" She reached for the wine glass she'd just set down, straightened it slightly. "Sweetheart, you're catastrophizing again. I've had it for years." I smiled. Put it on, said thank you. But that night I photographed it. Both sides, close up, good light, and ran the maker's mark through our authentication database at work. The hallmark traced to a jeweler called Moreau and Daughters, operating out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, between 1978 and 2011. Specialty, custom lockets for maternity keepsakes. Infant's first curl, that kind of thing. Diane has told me, on at least 4 separate occasions, that she has never been to Louisiana. I searched for Moreau and Daughters. The owner retired in 2011. No digital records, no forwarding contact. The thread went dead. I saved the photograph, filed it, moved on. But I didn't move on. Not really. I just got quieter about it. 6 months later, I was helping my uncle close out the last of Sandra's estate accounts. Routine work. The kind of thing I'm good at because I don't get emotional about paperwork. Except I did. Sandra's social security number appeared on 2 separate birth certificates. Mine, issued 1991 in Claiborne County, and a girl named Dana Lee, issued 1974 in Hardin County, 200 miles away. I pulled Dana Lee's full record. She died at 8 months old. Unexplained infant death. The parents' names on file didn't match Sandra's family. The SSN had been reused. Not stolen, reused. Which tells you how long ago it happened and how informal the record-keeping was. But here's what didn't fit. Sandra was enrolled at Eastern State University in the fall of 1974. I have her transcripts. She was living in a dormitory in a different county entirely. She could not have registered a birth certificate in Hardin County that September. So Sandra didn't create the Dana Lee identity. She adopted it later. And based on the activity trail, a library card, a post office box, a utility account, all opened in 1991 under the Dana Lee SSN, she activated it the same year I was born. My first read was that Sandra had been running a secondary identity for decades, that she had an exit plan she never used, that she was, in some way I hadn't yet mapped, the architect of whatever this was. I opened an encrypted folder on my work drive. I labeled it VDS 2024-00391 because I didn't have a better name for it yet. And then I sat with it. For 3 weeks I sat with it. Because using my professional skills to build a fraud case against the woman who raised me, the woman I was still actively grieving, felt like a desecration. There's no training for that, no protocol, but I kept the folder open, and I kept adding to it. Diane called in February and asked if she could sort through a box of Sandra's old winter scarves she'd seen in my storage unit. She wanted to donate anything I wasn't keeping. I told her I'd handle it. I handled it that weekend. The scarves were at the bottom. On top of them was a spiral notebook, the cheap wire-bound kind you buy at a gas station checkout. No label, no name on the cover. I opened it. Entry dated March 1989. She doesn't know yet. Sandra agreed today. God, I hate that she agreed. But it's the only way. A baby needs roots. I can't give her roots. Not from where I'm standing. So Sandra hadn't created the arrangement. She'd agreed to it. Diane was pregnant in 1989, I was born in 1991, and Sandra had agreed, 2 years in advance, to raise Diane's child as her own. The cover story was Sandra's gift, not her crime. Page 23, dated sometime in 1992. She took 3 steps today, all on her own, fell into the couch, looked up at me and laughed. I don't know what I'm allowed to call her in here. I've been writing Little Bird. Sandra calls her by her name. I can't do that yet. Little Bird. Sandra never called me that. Not once in 32 years. The ledger was folded into the back cover pocket. Handwritten. Dates in the left column, amounts in the middle, a brief notation on the right. It ran from 1991 to 2009. Most of the payments were round numbers. Monthly, consistent. But one entry stopped me. March 2003, $340, orthodontic, balance. My braces. I got them in the spring of 2003. I remember because I missed a field trip to pay the copay, and Sandra told me it wasn't a big deal, that she'd already sorted it out with the office. $340, the exact balance Sandra paid. Reimbursed in full 1 week later by Diane. I closed the notebook. Sat on the storage unit floor for a long time. If you have ever held something, a receipt, a letter, a single line of text, and felt the entire story of your life reorganize itself around that one small thing, tell me in the comments what that felt like. Because nobody writes the instructions for that moment. Nobody tells you what to do when the people who were supposed to give you a foundation were quietly, carefully, building a different one below the one you were standing on. You shouldn't have to figure out who you are again alone. A week before the brunch, Diane borrowed my laptop to look up a recipe. She handed it back after 10 minutes and said it was running slow. My encrypted drive had auto-mounted. The VDS folder was visible in the sidebar. She didn't say anything. Maybe she didn't see it. Maybe she did and decided to wait. I decided not to wait. I chose brunch. Specifically, the restaurant she always picks when she wants to feel in control of a situation. Maison 11. $40 eggs Benedict, white tablecloths, natural light coming in from the east-facing windows, so the whole room looks warmer than it is. She ordered first. She talked about her garden for 6 minutes. I let her. Then I set the Verita report on the table. Face down, no preamble. I said, I need you to look at something. Start on page 9. She picked it up. The report is heavy. 11 pages, spiral-bound, cover sheet with the chain of custody number in red. I watched her eyes track across the page. I heard the sound of the salt shaker against the linen when her hand bumped the table. She got to page 9. I know, because she stopped turning pages. She set the report down. She reached for the salt shaker. Her hand wrapped around it, just like always. She opened her mouth, and then she stopped. She didn't say it. For the first time in 32 years, she did not say it. The silence had a weight to it. The restaurant kept moving. Someone laughed 2 tables over, a server dropped a spoon, and the 2 of us sat completely still inside all of it. I said, I also have the diary, the ledger, with the $340 entry from March 2003, and the Verita chain of custody certifying identity duplication at 97.4% confidence. The full documentation is in an indexed binder. Rosa Medina has a copy. Diane looked at her hands. She didn't speak. I didn't need her to. People think the revelation is the hard part. It's not. The revelation lasts about 4 minutes at a brunch table. Then the server comes back to ask if everything tastes all right. The hard part is the 18 months after. Rosa Medina, my attorney, had handled 4 prior cases involving familial identity fraud. When I came to her with the binder, she didn't flinch. She looked at the Verita report, looked at the ledger, asked me one question. Does the Dana Lee SSN appear on any of your own legal documents? It did. My pediatric medical records from before 1995 list an insurance policy number tied to the Dana Lee account. Rosa said, Okay, that makes the birth record amendment mandatory, not optional. We file for a sealed correction. Mandatory, not optional. I wrote it down. What followed was a specific kind of bureaucratic punishment that I was not prepared for. Amending a death certificate when the deceased's legal identity is in question requires a probate court order, a DNA affidavit, and a notarized statement from the attending physician or their estate. Sandra's doctor had retired. Getting a statement from his estate took 11 weeks. 11 weeks to get a piece of paper that allowed us to file for the next piece of paper. The birth record seal required a separate filing in a separate county. I cried in a parking structure once, not for any single reason I can name. It was a Tuesday. I was sitting in my car between a filing appointment and a notary, and something just went. 40 minutes. I couldn't have told you exactly what I was crying about. Later, I think I understood it. I kept replaying the salt shaker, the way Diane's hand wrapped around it, the way she stopped herself from saying the catchphrase. She stopped herself. And I realized, sitting in that parking structure, that it wasn't just a tell. She wasn't reaching for an object to ground herself in a lie. She was reaching reflexively toward the person sitting across from her. And stopping, because she'd been stopping herself from reaching for me for 32 years. I didn't know what to do with that. I still don't. I found the Footnote 7 Club through Rosa, a private online group of women who had discovered identity fractures inside their own families. Falsified adoptions, switched birth records, SSNs recycled across generations. We have a sign-in ritual. When you join, you post 1 sentence. Just one. What the piece of paper said that changed everything. Mine was, parent-child match. 50.1% shared DNA. Diane Collier. Nobody in the group fixes anybody else. But we witness. And we use the phrase that somebody coined in the early days of the group. When something is too complicated to call a lie and too painful to call love, we say, I'm filing that one under F7. Under Footnote 7, for things that need a longer report to explain. Final tally. 1 woman buried under a name that wasn't hers. 1 woman who funded 32 years of someone else's motherhood and called it protection. 1 gas station notebook. 1 ledger entry for $340. 1 auto-mounted folder that she may or may not have seen. And 1 11-page report from Verita Document Sciences. Chain of custody number VDS 2024-00391. Footnote 7, page 9, subsection C. The truth doesn't rush. But it always shows up with documentation. If you're the kind of person who reads the footnotes, who keeps the folder open even when it costs you something, this channel was built for you. Subscribe, because the next story already has a chain of custody number. And trust me, you'll want to be here when it lands.